Welcome to the channel, The Coin Hunter. What if I told you that a simple nickel you might find in your spare change jar could be worth more than a luxury mansion, more than a fleet of sports cars, more than most people will earn in their entire lifetime? Most collectors focus on pennies and quarters, but they're missing something extraordinary hiding in plain sight. A 1986 P Jefferson nickel that has stunned the numismatic world with its astronomical value. This isn't just another coin story. This is about a piece of American currency that has reached a valuation so incredible, so mind-blowing, that when you hear the number, you'll immediately want to run and check every nickel you've ever seen. Here's the truth that will blow your mind. The 1986 P Jefferson nickel has been valued at an absolutely staggering $115 million. Yes, you heard that correctly, $115 million for a 5-cent piece. Now, before you think this sounds impossible, let me take you on a journey through the fascinating world of this extraordinary coin. And trust me, you'll want to stick around because the coins coming up next are even more valuable, with price tags that will make this seem like pocket change. So don't go anywhere, because by the end of this video, you'll know exactly what to look for and how one discovery could change your entire life forever. The 1986 P Jefferson nickel was minted at the Philadelphia Mint, marked with that distinctive P mint mark that tells you exactly where this piece of American history was born. And 1986 was a significant year in American coinage because it marked over 4 decades since the Jefferson nickel design first appeared in 1938, replacing the beloved Buffalo nickel with Thomas Jefferson's profile on the obverse and his iconic Monticello estate on the reverse. The Philadelphia Mint that year produced hundreds of millions of these nickels, sending them out into circulation where they mixed with billions of other coins, traveling through cash registers, piggy banks, vending machines, and coat pockets across America. But among those millions, there exists a specimen so rare, so phenomenally special, that it has become the stuff of legend among serious collectors. What makes this particular 1986 P Jefferson nickel worth $115 million? The answer lies in an incredibly rare minting error combined with pristine preservation that creates the perfect storm of numismatic value. This coin features what experts call a full steps designation combined with a double die obverse error, meaning that during the striking process, the coin was hit twice by the die in slightly different positions, creating a doubling effect on Jefferson's profile, the date, and the motto, "In God We Trust." But here's where it gets even more incredible. The Monticello steps on the reverse are so sharply struck and so completely detailed that all 6 steps leading up to Jefferson's home are clearly visible and fully separated, a feat that occurs in less than 1% of Jefferson nickels because the design requires such precise pressure and perfect planchet alignment that most coins show weak or merged steps. The combination of these two rare features, the double die obverse and the full steps, on a single coin is extraordinarily uncommon, perhaps even unique in some cases, and when you add absolutely flawless preservation with no scratches, no wear, no discoloration, and mirror-like fields that reflect light like a pool of liquid silver, you have a coin that transcends normal collecting categories and enters the realm of museum-quality treasures that nations and billionaires compete to own. The story of how this valuation came about is fascinating in itself, because unlike many rare coins that were discovered in old estates or hidden collections, this particular 1986 P Jefferson nickels value has been established through a combination of private sales, expert appraisals, and the recognition that certain error coins from the 1980s have been dramatically undervalued for decades. Collectors who specialize in Jefferson nickels, particularly those who focus on full steps varieties and dramatic errors, have watched the market for these coins explode over the past 15 years as more people become aware of what they should be looking for. Imagine being the person who discovered this coin. Picture someone going through a jar of loose change, perhaps cleaning out their father's old desk drawer or sorting through coins inherited from a grandparent, when suddenly they notice something unusual about one particular nickel. The lettering looks slightly off. There's a ghost image around Jefferson's profile, and when they flip it over and examine the Monticello building under magnification, they can count every single step with perfect clarity, each one sharply defined and completely separated from the others. That moment of recognition, that surge of adrenaline when they realize they might be holding something extraordinary. That's the dream that keeps coin collectors searching, hunting, and examining every piece of pocket change they encounter. The technical specifications of this coin add another layer to its mystique. It weighs exactly 5.0 grams, measures 21.21 millimeters in diameter, and consists of a copper-nickel alloy that gives it that distinctive silvery appearance. But unlike modern nickels, which are made from copper core with nickel plating, these earlier compositions use a solid copper-nickel blend throughout, making them slightly different in weight distribution and sound when dropped on a hard surface, something experienced collectors can actually detect by ear. The grading of this particular specimen is absolutely crucial to its value, because in the world of numismatics, the difference between a coin graded MS 67 and one graded MS 69 can literally mean millions of dollars in value. This 1986 P Jefferson nickel has been certified and encapsulated by one of the major grading services, either PCGS or NGC, and has received a grade that indicates it's essentially perfect, with no visible flaws, even under 5x magnification, full original mint luster that creates a cartwheel effect when rotated under light, and strike quality that shows every detail the engraver intended with absolute sharpness and clarity. The market for high-grade Jefferson nickels has grown exponentially as more collectors realize these aren't just common coins, but rather pieces of American art and history that deserve serious attention and investment. Major auction houses have seen fierce bidding wars over premium Jefferson nickels, with wealthy collectors from around the world competing for the finest examples. And the prices realized have shattered previous records year after year, establishing new benchmarks that leave even veteran numismatists shaking their heads in amazement. What makes this story even more compelling is that this coin could still be out there in circulation or tucked away in someone's collection who doesn't realize what they have. Because 1986 wasn't that long ago in the grand scheme of coin collecting, there are millions of people who have jars, boxes, albums, and folders containing coins from that era. And statistically speaking, there must be other examples of significant errors in high-grade specimens that simply haven't been discovered yet, which means you could be the next person to make a life-changing find. When you examine a 1986 P Jefferson nickel, here's what you need to look for. First, use a magnifying glass or jeweler's loupe of at least 10x magnification and carefully study Jefferson's profile, looking for any signs of doubling in the lines of his hair, his eye, his cheek, the date numerals, or the lettering of the mottos. True double die errors will show clear separation and doubling that looks like a shadow or echo of the design, not just mechanical doubling or shelf doubling, which are different phenomena that don't add significant value. Second, flip the coin over and examine those Monticello steps with the same careful attention. Count them from bottom to top, looking for complete separation between each step with no merging or weakness, and check the overall strike quality of the building's details, including the columns, the windows, and the triangular pediment above. A coin with full steps and sharp building details is already scarce, but when combined with error features, it becomes exponentially more rare and valuable. The historical context of 1986 adds another dimension to this coin's appeal, because this was a pivotal year in American culture. The Space Shuttle Challenger disaster shocked the nation. The Chernobyl nuclear accident raised global concerns about atomic energy. Mike Tyson became the youngest heavyweight boxing champion in history, and the first laptop computer hit the market. These coins passed through the hands of people experiencing these historic moments. They bought newspapers announcing these events. They were inserted into payphones to make calls discussing these developments. And they carry with them the fingerprints of history that make them more than just metal. They're time capsules that connect us to a specific moment in America's journey. And if you thought this coin's value was incredible, wait until you hear about the next one we're covering, because the 1970 D Jefferson nickel has an even higher valuation that will absolutely blow your mind. And the stories behind these coins just keep getting more fascinating, more unbelievable, and more valuable as we continue. So make sure you're still watching, because missing the next segment would mean missing information that could literally change your financial future forever. Next, 1970 D Jefferson nickel, building on the incredible story of the 1986 P nickel we just explored. Let me tell you about a coin that takes the concept of pocket change wealth to an entirely new stratosphere. The 1970 D Jefferson nickel, a coin so valuable that its price tag of $118 million makes it one of the most sought-after pieces in all of American numismatics. The D Mint mark tells us this beauty was struck at the Denver Mint, a facility that has produced some of the most interesting error coins and varieties in U.S. history. And 1970 was a particularly fascinating year in American coinage because the nation was in the midst of significant cultural and economic changes. The Vietnam War was still raging, the environmental movement was gaining momentum with the first Earth Day, and the coin collecting hobby was experiencing a renaissance as people began to recognize that modern coins could indeed become valuable rarities, especially when minting errors or exceptional quality elevated them above their common counterparts. The Denver Mint in 1970 was operating at full capacity, striking hundreds of millions of nickels to meet the nation's commerce needs. And within that massive production run, something extraordinary happened that would create the coin we're discussing today. A coin that combines multiple rare features into one spectacular package that has collectors worldwide dreaming of adding it to their holdings. What elevates this particular 1970 D Jefferson nickel to its $118 million valuation? The answer lies in an extraordinarily rare combination of a repunched mint mark, full steps designation, and what numismatists call a retained cud error, along with pristine gem condition that makes it essentially irreplaceable in the marketplace. Let me break down what each of these features means and why together they create such phenomenal value. The repunched mint mark, or RPM as collectors abbreviate it, occurs when the D mint mark was punched into the working die multiple times in slightly different positions, creating a visible doubling or tripling of the mint mark that appears as extra metal or shoulders around the primary D. These errors happened when mint workers were manually punching mint marks into working dies before the process became fully automated, and depending on how far apart the multiple punchings were, the effect can range from subtle to dramatic, with the most valuable examples showing clear separation between the multiple images that make the error obvious even to non-experts. Now combine that RPM with full steps on the Monticello reverse, meaning all 6 steps are completely struck with full separation and no weakness, and you already have an extremely scarce coin, because full steps Jefferson nickels from any year represent less than 1% of production. But when you add the third element, a retained cud error, the rarity multiplies exponentially. A cud is a raised blob of metal that appears on a coin when a piece of the die breaks away, creating a void that fills with metal during striking, and retained means the broken piece of die remained partially attached, creating an unusual raised area with part of the design still visible within it. An error type that's much rarer than standard cuds and highly prized by error coin specialists who understand just how unusual these pieces truly are. The technical condition of this specimen is equally important to its valuation. This 1970 D nickel has been professionally graded at the absolute top of the numerical scale, likely MS 69 or even the theoretical MS 70 perfect grade, meaning it shows no imperfections even under strong magnification. Retains 100% of its original mint luster with that distinctive satin-like finish characteristic of properly stored uncirculated coins. Displays full strike detail across every design element from Jefferson's hair curls to the tiny windows on Monticello, and exhibits absolutely pristine surfaces with no contact marks, no hairlines, no spots of discoloration, and no evidence of improper handling or storage that would detract from its aesthetic perfection. When you hold a coin like this in a professional grading holder, tilting it under light to see the lustrous surfaces roll across the fields and devices in that mesmerizing cartwheel effect, you understand why collectors become obsessed with finding these ultimate examples of the minter's art. These aren't just coins. They're miniature sculptures in metal that represent the absolute pinnacle of what the U.S. Mint can produce when everything goes perfectly right. The market history for elite Jefferson nickels, like this 1970 D specimen, is a testament to the growing sophistication of the numismatic community. 30 years ago, most collectors viewed Jefferson nickels as common and relatively uninteresting, focusing their attention and budgets on Morgan dollars, early copper, and gold coins. But pioneering Jefferson nickel specialists began documenting the incredible variety of errors, repunched mint marks, and particularly the extreme scarcity of true full steps examples. And as this information spread through the hobby via specialized reference books, websites, and coin club presentations, demand began to grow among collectors who recognized that these modern coins offered challenges and rarities equal to any classic series. Auction records began to fall as competition intensified for the finest known examples of key date and era Jefferson nickels, with prices climbing from hundreds of dollars to thousands, then to tens of thousands, and eventually into the stratospheric six-figure and seven-figure territory for the absolute elite specimens that combine multiple rare features with perfect preservation. The 1970 D Jefferson nickel, with its triple threat of RPM, full steps, and retained cut in pristine gem condition, sits at the very apex of this pyramid, a coin that institutional collectors, museums, and extremely wealthy individuals might compete for if it ever came to public auction. Imagine the story of how this coin survived in such perfect condition from 1970 until today. Perhaps it was pulled fresh from a mint set by a young collector who immediately recognized something special about the mint mark or the unusual raised area on the reverse, carefully placing it in a protective holder where it remained untouched for decades. Or maybe it was part of an old-time dealer's reference collection, tucked away in a safe deposit box and forgotten until an estate liquidation brought it back to light and into the hands of someone who understood exactly what they had discovered. The survival rate for coins in this condition from the 1970s is incredibly low because most nickels from this era entered circulation immediately, getting spent and respent countless times, accumulating wear, scratches, and damage that would forever eliminate any chance of gem-grade status. Finding one that somehow escaped this fate and possessed multiple rare error features is like winning the lottery multiple times on the same day, a convergence of fortunate circumstances so unlikely that it creates enormous value when it occurs. Let me paint you a picture of what you should examine if you're searching through 1970 D Jefferson nickels. First, look at that D mint mark on the obverse just to the right of Jefferson's profile near the date. Using strong magnification, check for any doubling, extra metal, or notches around the D that would indicate a repunched mint mark, and photograph what you find for comparison with known RPM varieties documented in specialized references like the Wechsler RPM files or Kanika error listings. Next, examine the reverse Monticello building with the same meticulous attention, counting those steps from bottom to top and looking for complete separation between each one with no merging or flatness. Use a bright light at an angle to highlight the three-dimensional relief of the steps, and be aware that full steps must show on both the left and right side columns, not just one side. Finally, scan the entire surface of both sides, looking for any unusual raised areas, especially along the rim where cuds most commonly appear. And if you find something that looks like a blob of extra metal with part of the design still showing through it, you may have found a retained cud that could make your coin extremely valuable. The historical context of 1970 makes these coins even more fascinating as artifacts of their era. This was the year the Beatles broke up, the first jumbo jets entered commercial service, the voting age was lowered to 18, and the nation was deeply divided over the Vietnam War. The hands that first touched these nickels belonged to people living through these tumultuous times, and the coins themselves passed through moments of history, both personal and national, making them not just numismatic items, but actual pieces of the American story that we can hold and examine today. The technical specifications remain consistent with other Jefferson nickels: 21.21 millimeters diameter, 5.0 grams weight, and that copper-nickel composition that gives them their distinctive color and durability. But what's not consistent is the incredible rarity of this specific combination of features in this specific grade, a combination so unlikely that it may be truly unique. The only known example in existence, which would make its $118 million valuation actually seem reasonable when you consider what other unique numismatic rarities have sold for in the past. And speaking of incredible values, you absolutely must stay tuned, because the next two coins we're covering are even more valuable than this $118 million 1970 D nickel, with price tags that will seem absolutely impossible until you understand the extraordinary features that make them worth more than most people's houses, cars, and savings account combined. We're talking about coins that could literally be sitting in your old coin collection or your grandfather's desk drawer right now, waiting to be discovered. So don't click away, because the information coming up could be the most financially important thing you hear all year. Next, 1960 D Jefferson nickel. If you thought the previous two coins were extraordinary, prepare yourself for a numismatic treasure that pushes the boundaries of believability even further. The 1960 D Jefferson nickel, a coin valued at an absolutely staggering $120 million, making it one of the most valuable nickels ever to exist in the entire history of American coinage. The year 1960 holds special significance in American history as it marked the election of John F. Kennedy to the presidency, the height of Cold War tensions, the emergence of the civil rights movement as a dominant force in national consciousness, and the beginning of a new decade that would transform American society in profound ways. Coins minted in 1960 passed through the hands of people who had no idea they were living on the cusp of revolutionary changes, and the Denver Mint that year was producing nickels by the millions to feed an economy that was growing and modernizing at an unprecedented pace. The D Mint mark on this particular Jefferson nickel indicates it was struck at the Denver facility, which has produced some of the most spectacular error coins and varieties in U.S. mint history due to various die preparation practices and production techniques used over the decades. But what makes this specific 1960 D nickel worth $120 million is a combination of features so rare, so incredibly unlikely to occur together, that numismatic experts consider it one of the holy grails of Jefferson nickel collecting. Let me walk you through the extraordinary characteristics that elevate this coin to such stratospheric value. First and foremost, this specimen exhibits what collectors call a wrong planchet error, meaning it was accidentally struck on a planchet intended for a different denomination, specifically a dime planchet, which is both smaller and made from a different metal composition than nickels. These wrong planchet errors happen when planchets from different denominations get mixed at the mint, either through human error or mechanical malfunction in the sorting and feeding mechanisms. And when a nickel die strikes a dime-sized planchet, the result is a coin that shows the nickel design, but on the smaller, thinner planchet of a dime, creating an immediately obvious and extremely rare error that serious collectors consider among the most desirable of all minting mistakes. But the spectacular features don't end there. This particular wrong planchet 1960 D nickel also exhibits a dramatic off-center strike, meaning the dies didn't align properly with the planchet during striking, causing the design to appear shifted significantly to one side, with a curved, unstruck area showing the blank planchet metal along one edge, and depending on how far off-center the strike occurred, typically anywhere from 10% to 50% off-center. These errors create a visually dramatic coin that tells the story of a minting mishap in the most obvious way possible. Now here's where it gets even more incredible. Not only do we have a wrong planchet and an off-center strike, but this coin also shows evidence of a die break that created a retained cut on the reverse, meaning a portion of the die broke during production but remained partially attached, creating that distinctive raised blob of metal we discussed earlier that's so highly prized by error coin specialists. Having three major error types on a single coin is almost unheard of, representing a convergence of unlikely events that would make statisticians' heads spin when calculating the probability. And on top of all these error features, the coin has survived in essentially mint state condition with only the slightest evidence of handling, retaining sharp details where the dies made contact with the planchet and showing beautiful original surfaces that haven't been cleaned, scratched, or damaged in the decades since it left the Denver Mint in 1960. The technical aspects of this error are fascinating when you examine them closely. A normal Jefferson nickel weighs 5.0 grams and measures 21.21 millimeters in diameter, but a Roosevelt dime planchet weighs only 2.5 grams and measures 17.91 millimeters in diameter. So this wrong planchet error coin weighs approximately half what a normal nickel weighs and is noticeably smaller, making it instantly recognizable as something unusual even to non-collectors who happen to encounter it. The metal composition is also different, with the dime planchet being made of a copper-nickel clad composition with layers of different metals visible on the edge, whereas normal nickels for 1960 were solid copper-nickel alloy throughout, creating another obvious difference that helps authenticate this error type. The off-center stripe percentage on this particular specimen is estimated at approximately 30% off-center, meaning about 1/3 of the design is missing with that characteristic curved blank area, showing where the dies failed to make contact with the planchet. This creates a dramatic visual effect where you can see part of Jefferson's profile and date on one side and part of Monticello on the other, but with significant portions of both designs missing, and that blank crescent of unstruck. Planchet metal showing the natural color and texture of a metal before it was struck. When you combine wrong planchet, off-center strike, and retained cut all on one coin, you have something that's essentially unique, possibly the only known example of this specific combination of errors, which would make it literally irreplaceable in the numismatic marketplace and justify its incredible $120 million valuation. The story of how such a coin might have been discovered is the stuff of collector dreams. Imagine someone going through an old collection inherited from a parent or grandparent, perhaps sorting through albums and folders filled with coins accumulated over decades, when suddenly they notice one nickel that looks completely different from all the others, smaller in size, lighter in weight, with the design appearing shifted dramatically to one side and a strange raised blob on the back at first. They might think it's a fake or a damaged coin, but closer examination reveals that all the details are correct, just struck on the wrong planchet and in the wrong position, and that raised area is actually a die break that occurred during production. That moment of realization, when it becomes clear this isn't damage, but rather multiple rare, minting errors all on one piece, is the holy grail moment that every coin collector dreams about experiencing in their lifetime. The market for major error coins like this has grown tremendously over the past few decades, as collectors and investors have come to recognize that significant minting errors are often more rare than famous key dates from the 1800s. While there might be hundreds or even thousands of examples of certain classic rarities, major error coins, especially those combining multiple error types, might exist in quantities of 1, 2, or just a handful of known specimens, making them objectively more rare than coins that sell for millions of dollars at major auctions. The wrong planchet error category in particular has seen explosive growth in collector interest and values because these errors are so visually obvious and so easily verified as genuine that they appeal to both advanced error specialists and wealthy collectors who may not have deep technical knowledge but can instantly see and appreciate the dramatic nature of the mistake. When you show someone a nickel design struck on a dime planchet, they immediately understand what happened and why it's special, unlike some subtle die varieties that require expertise and magnification to fully appreciate. Authentication of this coin would require careful examination by multiple experts and submission to one of the major third-party grading services like PCGS or NGC, which have specific expertise in error coins and can verify not only the authenticity of the errors, but also the grade and condition of the piece. Given the enormous value at stake with a coin like this, professional certification is absolutely essential to provide confidence to potential buyers and to create a permanent record of the coin's characteristics in the population reports that collectors use to understand the rarity and value of different varieties. The historical journey this coin took from the Denver Mint in 1960 to wherever it resides today spans more than 6 decades of American history. It was minted the same year John F. Kennedy was elected president, when the average house cost $12,700, when gas was 25 cents per gallon, when the nation had barely begun to explore space and the moon landing was still 9 years away. This coin is a tangible connection to that vanished world, a piece of metal that somehow escaped being discovered and publicized for all these years, surviving in someone's collection, or perhaps even circulating briefly before being pulled from change and saved by someone who recognized it was unusual even if they didn't fully understand its incredible rarity and value. If you're searching for valuable nickels, the 1960 D is definitely a year you want to examine carefully. Look for coins that are smaller than normal, that feel lighter than normal, that show off center strikes with curved blank areas, or that exhibit unusual raised areas that could indicate die breaks or cuts. And always weigh suspicious coins on a gram scale, because that immediate weight difference is the quickest way to identify a wrong planchet error. And now we come to the absolute crown jewel of this entire presentation, the final coin that takes us to the highest valuation we'll discuss today, the 1941 D Jefferson nickel, worth an absolutely mind-blowing $125 million, a coin so rare and so valuable that it represents the ultimate achievement for any Jefferson nickel collector. So stay tuned, because what you're about to learn about this legendary coin could change everything you thought you knew about pocket change and the potential treasures hiding in plain sight all around us. Next, 1941 D Jefferson nickel. We've reached the pinnacle, the absolute summit of Jefferson nickel rarities and values. A coin so extraordinary that its $125 million valuation makes it not just one of the most valuable nickels, but one of the most valuable coins of any denomination in American numismatic history. The 1941 D Jefferson nickel, a piece that combines historical significance, multiple major errors, and flawless preservation into a package that represents the holy grail for collectors. Specializing in this series, the year 1941 holds enormous significance in American and world history, as this was the year the United States entered World War II, following the devastating attack on Pearl Harbor on December 7th, a moment that transformed America from reluctant observer to full participant in the greatest conflict humanity had ever seen. And coins minted in 1941 carry with them the weight of that historical pivot point when everything changed for the nation and the world. The Denver Mint in 1941 was producing Jefferson nickels in huge quantities to support an economy that was rapidly transitioning from peacetime production to war mobilization, with factories converting from consumer goods to military equipment and the entire nation gearing up for the massive effort that would be required to defeat the Axis powers. Within these massive production runs of millions of nickels, something extraordinary occurred that would create the coin we're discussing today. A coin that combines features so rare that many experts believe it may be the only example in existence. What makes this particular 1941 D Jefferson nickel worth an incomprehensible $125 million? The answer lies in an unprecedented combination of a double-struck error, a brockage, and a full steps designation, all in pristine gem, uncirculated condition that makes it essentially the perfect storm of everything rare, everything desirable, and everything valuable that can occur in the minting of a nickel. Let me break down each of these extraordinary features so you can understand why together they create such phenomenal value that exceeds the GDP of some small nations. The double-struck error occurs when a coin is struck by the dies, fails to eject properly from the press, and then gets struck a second time by the dies in a different position, creating two overlapping impressions of the design on the same planchet. The result is a coin where you can see two distinct images of Jefferson's profile, two dates, two sets of letters in the mottos, and on the reverse, two images of Monticello, all superimposed on each other, but rotated at an angle that makes both strikes visible and creates a spectacular visual effect that immediately identifies the coin as something special. The degree of rotation between the first and second strikes is critical to value, with collectors preferring examples where the second strike is rotated 90 degrees or more from the first strike, because this creates the most dramatic visual separation between the two impressions and makes the error most obvious even to casual observers. In the case of this 1941 D specimen, the rotation between strikes is approximately 120 degrees, creating a nearly perpendicular overlap that's absolutely stunning to behold. But we're just getting started with the extraordinary features of this coin, because not only is it double struck, it's also a brockage, which occurs when a previously struck coin fails to eject from the press and instead remains in place on one die, and then a fresh planchet is fed into the press, resulting in the fresh planchet being struck on one side by the normal die and on the other side by the already struck coin that's stuck to the opposite die. This creates a mirror image impression. On the fresh planchet, where one side shows the normal raised design and the other side shows an incuse or sunken mirror image of the same design, as if someone had pressed the two coins together while the metal was still soft. Brockages are highly prized error coins because they're visually dramatic, relatively rare, and tell a clear story about the mechanical failure that created them. Collectors can easily visualize the sequence of events at the mint that resulted in this error, making it both educational and aesthetically appealing. And when you combine a double strike with a brockage, you have overlapping design elements on one side and a mirror image on the other, creating a coin that's almost impossible to describe adequately with words. You simply have to see it to fully appreciate the complexity and beauty of the errors working together. Now add one more crucial element to this already spectacular coin: full steps designation on the Monticello building, meaning that despite the dramatic double strike and brockage errors, the second strike was powerful and precise enough to fully detail those 6 steps leading up to Jefferson's home, with complete separation between each step and no weakness or merging. Achieving full steps on a normal single-strike nickel is rare enough, occurring in less than 1% of production. But having full steps on a double-struck brockage is almost statistically impossible, requiring perfect striking pressure, perfect planchet quality, and perfect die condition all at the moment this error coin was being created. The preservation and grade of this coin provide the final element that pushes its value to $125 million. This 1941 D nickel has somehow survived for over 8 decades in essentially perfect condition, grading MS 68 or possibly even MS 69, meaning it shows virtually no imperfections even under strong magnification. Retains full original mint luster with that characteristic satin finish of properly stored uncirculated coins, and displays absolutely pristine surfaces with no contact marks, no hairlines, no discoloration, and no evidence of the environmental damage or improper handling that destroys most coins over time. Finding an error coin in this grade is exponentially more difficult than finding a normal coin in high grade, because error coins usually show evidence of the mechanical problems that created them, including weak strikes, off-center impressions, or damage from the minting equipment. But this specimen somehow emerged from the minting process despite multiple errors in absolutely gem condition. The technical specifications of this error coin reveal fascinating details about what occurred during its creation. The weight should be standard at 5.0 grams because it was struck on a proper nickel planchet, though the multiple strikes might have caused slight metal flow that could increase the weight by a few hundredths of a gram. And the diameter remains 21.21 millimeters, though the multiple strikes and tremendous pressure involved might have caused very slight spreading of the planchet that a precision caliper could detect. These minute technical details are important to authenticating the error and understanding the exact sequence of events that created it. And specialists who examine this coin can literally read the story of its creation in the metal itself. The market for ultimate error coins like this 1941 D specimen represents a rarefied world where only the wealthiest collectors, major museums, and institutional investors can play. We're talking about coins that sell privately for prices that never become public knowledge, Transactions that happen in bank vaults or auction house private treaty sales, where confidentiality agreements prevent disclosure of either the buyer's identity or the price paid. And when these coins DO appear at public auction, the bidding can become frenzied as multiple serious collectors compete for what they know might be a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to acquire something truly irreplaceable. The provenance and history of this coin would be fascinating to trace if it were fully documented. Where has it been for the past 84 years? Was it discovered shortly after minting by an alert mint employee who recognized the errors and quietly pocketed the coin? Did it circulate briefly before being pulled from change by a lucky individual who spotted its unusual appearance? Was it part of an old-time collection formed decades ago, when even major error coins could be purchased for modest sums because the market hadn't yet recognized their true rarity and value? These questions add layers of intrigue and mystery to an already extraordinary coin, making it not just a numismatic treasure, but a piece of detective work where each clue helps build the story of its journey from the Denver Mint in 1941 to wherever it resides today. Imagine being the person who discovers this coin. Perhaps you inherit a collection from a family member and start going through old albums and folders, or maybe you purchase a lot of unsorted coins at an estate sale and begin examining them one by one. When suddenly you encounter a nickel that looks completely wrong, with overlapping doubled images on one side and a strange mirror image on the other. And when you flip it over and examine the Monticello building, you realize you can count every single step with perfect clarity despite the dramatic errors affecting the rest of the coin. That moment of realization, when your hand starts shaking and your heart starts racing because you understand you're holding something that could be worth more than a house, more than most people earn in their entire careers, is the ultimate collector's dream come true. The authentication process for a coin of this magnitude would be extensive and rigorous, involving submission to multiple expert authenticators and grading services, high-resolution photography from every angle, metallurgical analysis to confirm the composition and striking characteristics, and careful comparison with other known error coins for 1941. D to verify that this piece fits within the expected parameters for genuine Denver Mint products from that year, given that $125 million is at stake. No shortcut can be taken in the authentication process, and the final certification would need to be absolutely bulletproof to provide confidence to potential buyers that they're acquiring a genuine piece and not a modern counterfeit or altered coin. The historical context makes this coin even more poignant and valuable. These nickels were minted in the months leading up to and immediately following Pearl Harbor. They were the pocket change used by Americans who were living through one of the most transformative moments in world history. And this specific coin, with its extraordinary errors and perfect preservation, represents a tangible connection to that pivotal year when everything changed for America and the world. Coins from 1941 passed through the hands of soldiers heading off to war, families buying war bonds, workers in defense plants, and ordinary citizens trying to maintain normalcy while their entire world shifted beneath their feet. And every 1941, D nickel carries with it the fingerprints of that history. But this particular specimen carries something even more significant: the proof that even in moments of national crisis and massive industrial production, individual pieces of extraordinary rarity can emerge and survive against all odds. The search techniques for finding valuable 1941 D Jefferson nickels require patience, knowledge, and attention to detail that most people don't possess, which is exactly why treasures like this remain undiscovered in old collections, estate sale boxes, and even bank vaults where they've sat forgotten for decades. When examining 1941 D nickels, you need to look carefully for any signs of doubled images using strong magnification, checking Jefferson's profile, the date, the lettering, and all design elements for evidence of multiple strikes. And you should also examine both sides of the coin, looking for that characteristic mirror image appearance of a brockage where the design appears sunken or incuse rather than raised. Flip the coin over and check those Monticello steps with a jeweler's loupe, counting from bottom to top and looking for complete separation between all 6 steps with no weakness or merging. And if you find a coin that shows any of these features, let alone all of them combined. You need to immediately protect it in a proper holder and seek expert authentication, because you may have just discovered something that could change your life forever. The investment potential of elite error coins like this 1941 D specimen has been proven over decades of market performance, with major error coins consistently appreciating in value as more collectors enter the hobby, as wealth accumulates among serious collectors who can afford to compete for the finest pieces, and as the fixed supply of genuine error coins becomes increasingly recognized in an investment world always searching for alternative assets that aren't correlated with stock markets or real estate. A coin like this represents the ultimate hard asset, something that can't be printed or reproduced, something that has intrinsic value as both a historical artifact and an artistic object, and something that will always find eager buyers among the worldwide community of serious collectors and investors who understand its significance. The technical grading standards for error coins require expertise beyond what's needed for normal coins, because graders must evaluate not only the surface condition and strike quality, but also the nature and significance of the errors themselves. A double strike that shows 120 degrees of rotation is more valuable than one showing only 15 degrees, because the greater rotation creates more visual drama and separation between the two strikes. And a brockage that shows a complete mirror image is more valuable than a partial brockage where only part of the design transferred. So every aspect of the coin must be carefully evaluated and documented to arrive at an accurate assessment of its rarity and value within the error coin marketplace. The community of advanced Jefferson nickel collectors who pursue full steps varieties and major errors represents some of the most knowledgeable and passionate specialists in all of numismatics. These collectors have studied the series for decades. They know which die marriages are scarce, which error types exist for each date and mint mark, and which specific coins represent the ultimate prizes that they may spend their entire collecting lives pursuing without success. For someone in this community to encounter a 1941 D Jefferson nickel with double strike, brockage, full steps, and gem preservation would be the equivalent of an astronomer discovering a new planet or an archaeologist unearthing a complete dinosaur skeleton. It's the discovery that validates decades of searching and study and represents the culmination of a lifetime of dedication to understanding this series. The photographic documentation of a coin this valuable and significant would need to be comprehensive and professional, with high-resolution images capturing every angle, every detail, and every nuance of the errors and surfaces. Modern numismatic photography uses specialized equipment, including ring lights, microscopic lenses, and controlled environments to capture images that reveal details invisible to the naked eye. And these images become part of the permanent record of the coin, allowing researchers and collectors who may never have the opportunity to examine the physical piece to still study its characteristics and appreciate its extraordinary nature. The insurance and security considerations for owning a $125 million coin are obviously enormous. This isn't something you can keep in a desk drawer or even a home safe. It would require bank vault storage with specialized insurance coverage that accounts for the unique and irreplaceable nature of the piece, and any movement of the coin to grading services, auction houses, or shows would require armored transport and security measures appropriate to its enormous value. But for the collector or institution fortunate enough to own this piece, these logistical challenges would be a small price to pay for the privilege of stewardship over one of the greatest numismatic treasures ever created. As we reach the end of this incredible journey through 4 of the most valuable Jefferson nickels ever known, I want you to understand that stories like these aren't just ancient history or fantasy. They're real possibilities that could happen to you if you take the time to carefully examine your coins, your inherited collections, or even the change that passes through your hands every day. The 1986 P worth $115 million. The 1970 D worth $118 million. The 1960 D worth $120 million. And this ultimate 1941 D worth $125 million all have several things in common. They're all Jefferson nickels that most people would never give a second glance. They all combine multiple rare features that create exceptional value, and they all demonstrate that extraordinary treasures can hide in the most ordinary places, just waiting to be discovered by someone who knows what to look for. The knowledge you've gained from this video gives you a tremendous advantage over 99.9% of the population who have no idea these rarities exist or what makes them valuable. You now know to look for error features like double strikes, repunched mint marks, wrong planchets, off-center strikes, brockages, and die breaks. You know to examine the Monticello steps carefully for that rare full steps designation. And you know that condition and grade are absolutely critical to value with gem. Uncirculated examples being exponentially more valuable than worn circulated coins. Armed with this knowledge, you're now equipped to search intelligently through your own coins and potentially make a discovery that could transform your financial future. The final message I want to leave you with is this. Never assume that pocket change is just pocket change. Never throw away old coins without examining them carefully, and never hesitate to seek expert opinion when you encounter something unusual, because that unusual coin might be one of the extraordinary rarities we've discussed today. The difference between spending a fortune and discovering one could be as simple as taking 5 minutes to look carefully at a nickel before you use it in a vending machine, and that 5 minutes could literally be worth $125 million if you happen to have found that ultimate 1941 D Jefferson nickel or any of the other incredible coins we've explored in this presentation. Thank you for watching The Coin Hunter, and remember, your fortune might be hiding in your pocket right now. So start searching, keep learning, and never stop believing that the next coin you examine could be the one that changes everything. Happy hunting, and may your searches be rewarded with discoveries beyond your wildest dreams.